We all have heard horror stories of how a remodel nearly tore a couple apart, as well as how impactful our environment can be on our state of well-being. Remodels don't have to end in divorce, and we can reflect our true selves in our environment with the right approach. Welcome to Psychitecture. My name is Rachel Melvald, and I'm a psychotherapist and designer. Psychitecture was developed as a methodological approach to ease issues that come up in design challenges, as well as a philosophy on how our environment can reflect our highest selves. Each week, I will interview an expert in the field of design and psychology to shed light on design challenges. I will also have a special series called The Psychitect Is In, where I can offer help to those in design intervention need. If you're enjoying The Psychitect Is In, please subscribe to my podcast, as well as follow me on social media at Rachel Melvald. And if you are a client, couple, or designer architect having a design challenge, please feel free to email me at my website, psychitecture.com, or rachel@psychitecture.com. Welcome to The Psychitect Is In. Okay. Welcome, Lynda. We are so excited to have you on The Psychitect Is In. We are always launching, but this is such an appropriate podcast interview to have because we are going to talk real estate and mid-century modern homes from a designer who has many different lives before even being a realtor that goes into the artistic expression of even what you work with now. So without further ado, welcome, Lynda. And yeah, let's just jump right in it. Why don't we tell the guest who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so my name is Lynda Kahn, and I sell real estate right now at Compass, and I specialize in architecture and design. I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I always loved modernist architecture since I was a child. My first adventures in design were probably just walking through the Museum of Modern Art and the Guggenheim in New York, along with just flipping through magazines like Life magazine and Look magazine and seeing the beautiful architectural photography that was on display in these magazines, mostly of mid-century houses. Maybe Julius Schulman had shot them, or some of the other famous architects of that, photographers of that time. And you know, I always dreamed of living in one of these houses. I remember other kids were playing house, but I was drawing floor plans of my dream house.
Oh, I love that. Because I was one of those children that were always playing house and then I was obsessed with doll houses in my Lego set because I just so badly wanted to be in one of these houses. So I so appreciate that you are already projecting and designing what you wanted to be in at that age. So
Right. So anyway, that continued my interest in design and architecture. I went to school for fine arts. I majored in sculpture, and I was going to school at Philadelphia College of Art, which is now called the University of the Arts. And I was living across the street from Louis Kahn, not relation to myself.
That is, yeah.
The most renowned architect of the time in the 70s.
That's right.
The whole world, the most renowned architect. And I was living right there, waving to him every day on my way to school, stop and chat. And it was lovely.
Oh, to skip around and be in front of that. Yeah.
So that was pretty crazy. Then I continued my studies in Chicago, which is known for its amazing architecture, Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright. And, you know, as a hobby, I would go on architecture tours on weekends and look at the beautiful houses. So that was it was my interest. and my hobby. It was a distraction from school, but I love sculpture, I love light, I love design.
Yeah,
So it all fits.
it
Then,
really does.
fast forward through New York, and I was directing film and commercials and videos and had a band and living in downtown in Soho in a loft.
Oh, you are just way cool, Linda. I love that. Okay, go on.
And, we were always like changing the loft around, building rooms, tearing down rooms, and, experimenting with design within, those four walls. And I'd also work with that with sets that I was working with. I worked with production designers and created sets and worked with screens and projection on screens and different kinds of, design, not architecture, but three-dimensional design.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So
And
then,
being in that time as you were even just studying, becoming your own artist, you moved to New York in the time, the the era of in Soho. What era was
80,
that?
the 80s.
The 80s. So really in the heart of such a powerful time in New York.
Right. Yes. And, I guess I was a video artist and then became a director in the beginning of MTV.
Yeah, that
And
was when I was growing up on MTV. I really thought that was yeah, but to go to New York in the 80s, I remember just being so blown away. It was like an art school explosion,
right.
right?
Yes. And there was a community of artists and it was very vibrant and everybody shared and worked on each other's projects and it was a fantastic time to be in New York.
And
And
also for
New
you
York.
becoming a director, working in the video art medium
Mhm.
was a really up and coming medium to be working in as a
Yes.
visual artist.
Yes, this is true.
And
And
so having that go on with this background, moving into more architecture.
right. So then, fast forward, I became bi-coastal. And just a note, my identical twin sister and I have a company called Twin Art.
Yes. Tell us more about that.
Well, we do branding and identity and design. We're really an art and design brand. And we've been doing that since like the late 70s. And
Great.
and our company, we work together, we work apart on different jobs. We both have Emmys, and that's for design. Uh,
Congratulations. That's no
thank
small
you.
award.
Thank you. And anyway, that carried us to being bi-coastal and, directing in LA and New York and having the business in both places. And so then I decided that I really wanted to be in California and make that my home. And my sister ended up in being the bi-coastal one. I did it first, she did it second. So we just, that was our life. Okay. We were on planes all the time. Not our life now, but it was our life then.
Truly bi-coastal and working in the art world, film, video, media,
Mhm.
and now architecture, real estate, really being able to be on both coasts much must have been very invigorating or keeping you grounded on the one hand from you both of you being rooted in the
Yes.
city of New York and here as we see Los Angeles as this expansive, you know, frontier of creativity.
Yes.
So,
In the 90s, it really started to move the creativity to Los Angeles. It's in both places now. It's more of Brooklyn, right?
right.
And then New York, because New York is the island of the rich, right? So, but then it was in New York and downtown. And then, now it's really exploded in LA with all the galleries. That wasn't really when I moved here in the early 90s. There weren't as many galleries and such a vibrant art scene.
That's right. Now it's really hit its stride with,
Right.
any artists are wanting to be in Los Angeles, even maybe
Especially
more
with
so.
downtown and just the whole food explosion too in LA. Mostly down.
Yeah. And so your sister, being twins and the two of you being able to be bicoastal, be twins, there's so much binary here, you know, and as a duo, right? And how, this is even just informing your profession, moving more into architecture and, more specifically, you working in real estate. How do the two of you really bounce ideas off of each other? How did you both keep in that creative impulse? I imagine it's very synergistic.
Yes, it's really like tag team. We realized early on, we realized that it was not a good idea to be on set together co-directing because the talent would get really mixed up.
It's true. It's true because you're
we
identical.
became we we became the center of attention
Oh,
because they never
yeah.
seemed like two women directors that looked the same directing them. And so we realized that we had to stop doing that.
Yeah.
So the live action directing, we would split it up. Like one of us would be director on set, maybe one of us would be producing it. But the creative ideas in the beginning and the process, we were both always involved.
And I really appreciate that both of you and you pivoting to real estate, you have kept your artistic connection in how you view, our three-dimensional space or even how you work with design. You've seemed to moving into learning more about mid-century modern and how you always had a passion and a love for it kind of went full circle in that way, right?
Well, when I came out to California, as a diversion and a hobby, I would go on the architecture tours all the time. I would go see the Neuters, the Schindlers, the case study houses whenever there were, tours from the Historical Society. Dwell used to give all these great tours all around town.
That's right.
Well weekend, and that was years ago. That was probably 20 years ago. And so I would just do that. It was my hobby. And then I started looking for houses for myself to buy. And in the 90s, there were just like, there were so many opportunities, it seems, which it's not the case now.
Oh my God, what a different real
And
estate time.
right. So, so in the 90s, it was like there were so many, like the Neuters, the Schindlers, the Pierre Koenigs, the Craig
For
Elwood,
sale?
the
Or
Hensmans, the A. Quincy Jones, the Gregory Ains, and I would look at all of them. But they all had one thing in common. They needed extensive renovation,
ah.
really mostly gut renovation.
Okay,
So
that's
they
the through
weren't,
line.
yeah, they weren't move in. Okay. Or I couldn't afford anything, move in. I never saw one of the mid centuries by a great architect that was ready to move in. And I just couldn't wrap myself around that because I was still directing and on set, and I didn't have the time to put into that. So I started looking at contemporary architects that were already that in houses that were new and modern and green.
Mm-hmm.
And I became really interested in them, and I knew a lot of the architects and was involved in the conversation. And some of those were Koning Eisenberg and Mark Mack and Andrea Leonardin and Barbara Bester's work I love, and Lorcan O'Herlihy. When finally I moved into a Lorcan O'Herlihy townhouse on Willoughby.
Oh,
And that was great. I was very happy there.
fantastic. Yeah. So you really did, move
Oh,
into one of your
yes, yes,
architectural.
I love that house. And,
Yeah.
it had a bridge, it was white, it was really like a piece of art. It was really spectacular. Very minimal. I love minimal art. I love, a minimal environment. So when I lived there, I decided to get my real estate license only because my sister had moved back to New York. And so we weren't really working at the moment. My father was very sick and I was taking care of him. So I didn't feel like I was able to do jobs at that time and take on that responsibility
Mm-hmm.
in entertainment. And the designers in my office had moved. One of them moved to New York, another one moved to New Mexico. And it was just, I think I'll just take off for 6 months and, study and get my real estate license. Never really considering working in real estate full time. Then I got the license. And then I started working as a creative director for another company because they had some films that they wanted me to work on. And that was fantastic. And I was in actually a Koning Eisenberg building. My office was in a Koning Eisenberg building looking over the CBS logo.
Oh my gosh, what juxtaposition always, huh?
Right.
Always across a CVS logo.
The CBS logo. It was great. And it was, the black and white logo, which is one of my favorites. And it was at the farmers market, that little like enclave of Koning Eisenberg offices.
Oh, that's right.
And yeah, so I was very happy there. And I didn't really consider the real estate, but I had gone with a new company at that time called The Agency. And I started selling real estate at the same time that I was creative directing. I was doing a shoot at a beautiful Neutra lake house on one job, and then I was like selling a Lloyd Wright house at the agency. So it was
Oh,
like, it was interesting.
yeah, it's such synergy just
Right.
to be in both those worlds, yet still working in these architectural gems. One is informing the other from a sales perspective, but you were balancing being in the creative, filming of that. And I would imagine that would only support working in real estate and really
Yes,
connecting to these homes with your clients and
yes,
really
it
being
did.
able to
And then
tap into it.
a lot of my clients are people that I worked with in the business,
Okay, so
like
that's okay.
production designers or producers or directors.
Right,
So,
because it's such a LA almost rite of passage, if that's the right way to say it, to own a mid-century modern home in LA is really like this artistic expression of making it in your own art by landing in one of those homes,
right,
right?
right. Well, they had the same interests and they trusted me. Um, and I would find them houses or list their houses. So it really worked out. And that's how I dovetailed into the real estate.
Yeah. And how would you, I would think, like you said, the through line of so many of these architectural historical homes is that they're not ready to move in always. There's always, they've not been all up.
Well, some of them have, but a lot of times it'll cost as much to restore the house as the house costs.
Right.
So, so be aware.
Buyer beware. So how do you work on that type of sale, or what is the typical?
It depends on who the client is.
Yeah.
You have to I've been lucky with my clients. They understand the process, and they're usually creative people. So it's not like they're not naive.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk them through the process, and that's
So they're
really
typically maybe clients that are going to understand moving into one of these homes, that it's going to take.
well, they could be, I mean, some of them are architects. They have an understanding of this. They're
Yeah. And they
designers.
have a love for it.
If
They have a
they're
passion for it.
if
I
they're going
would,
to take on a house that needs that kind of restoration, you
unless you have a
know,
passion and an art for it, or
you
some,
should
yeah.
know about it, right? What it's going to take.
Right. And what are some careful considerations that you've seen that have been what might have been, I don't know, looking like a not big restoration that turned into more of a major restoration? Does it usually unfold like that? Where how does that work if one were going to
Well,
purchase?
something can look very good to the eye, or possibly it was restored 10 years ago and incorrectly. Like there was one house that I was in escrow on, which was, it was a great house. And it was a mid century, it was in the hills in Sherman Oaks. And it had a beautiful pool, and it was just great. And it looked like it was in fantastic, it just looked fantastic. But then you bring in inspectors, and their inspectors go through it, and then they bring to your attention whatever the problems may be. So this was a house I was looking for myself, and it turned out there was some dry rot. Well, the dry rot went through the major beam in the house.
Hmm.
So basically you had to take off the ceiling, the roof, and then you would have to put in all new windows. And while you would and it looked beautiful when you walked in.
But the bones of
It
it
was
were.
dry through it. And you find these things out during inspection, and then when you decide whether you're going to move forward on something like that. And there's always going to be more than you first see. Once you take down a wall, there's usually more that's going on.
Taking down the wall. And that's as a psychotherapist in psychotecture, when we bring down a wall, there is always more going on, isn't
Right,
there?
exactly.
Well, I think that also can help our listeners. What is, like, are these houses plentiful? Are they hard to come by, especially
Well,
right now?
now you can find these houses that have already been restored,
Okay.
but they they're in demand now. They weren't in demand when I started looking in the 90s. So now there's a premium on them as far as
Okay.
price to have
Yeah.
a piece of architecture, especially by a name architect.
So they are in demand right now.
Yes,
Okay, good to know.
premium.
And
Paying a
for
premium for the name on the house.
for the name of the architect on the house, that has increased its value.
Yes.
the panache, so to
Right.
speak.
Right. Because now there are all these books, and it's there wasn't the interest in that.
Now, because it's such a, not a fad, but there's so much
Well,
more.
there's more of an interest in design in general. I was always interested, but I went to art school.
Now it's much more of a, if you're an urban professional or if you're living in a city, you know who these
Well,
architects
no, I
are.
don't know that everybody knows, but they are in books and they're recognized.
Which is a good point. How do we share with viewers how to get more involved in mid-century modern?
Okay, well, that's very easy. So tickets just went on sale today
Good
for
segue.
for Palm Springs Modernism. And so you can go onto their website and look through, and there are all kinds of tours of houses in Palm Springs, but also they have lectures at the museum every day. It goes for 2 weeks, and it's February, I think, 17th to the 27th.
Yeah, that's a great way to really immerse yourself in some of the
On
big architect names, especially in Palm Springs. And it's a
Right.
great trip and it's a great,
Yes, but there are other things that are going on there, like Barbara Bester is doing a lecture on the Silvertop House.
oh,
And
fantastic.
yeah, which is a house that was by Neutra, that's up on no, it wasn't Neutra, it was Lautner. Wait.
One of those two. Yeah. I happen to
Lautner.
really have a love of Neutra. I really do.
Yeah.
I was reading a New Yorker article on, and I also gave a talk on trauma informed design and how Neutra allegedly said he was like the healing designer, right? That he would design for health and well-being with, I think, the Lowell House
But
was
yeah, yeah,
one of his, but so much of the elements of a Neutra are not so healing in that.
right. They're all straight lines. They're very
Yeah, you could feel
hard,
very on edge,
Rich
right?
Hero, yes, of that aesthetic. But
Yeah.
Lautner is the total opposite. So Lautner is the dreamer. Everything is
Ah,
like the James Bond houses built into a rock, or glass with all these forms. But I don't think that I wouldn't call healing either.
right. But I do appreciate.
They're
I,
healing for me.
yeah.
They're hard. They're glass and hard
Yeah, they're hard, they're glass, you're kind of on the edge of,
world.
going of the world, while I like how you draw the opposite in Lautner in that it's very futuristic and dreamy and almost like dissociated. Like it's kind of not dissociated in a bad way, but it's like an escape world and it's like you said, more
It's very
rounded,
organic to the
organic.
land
Yes.
and the
Yes.
light, but he uses materials like brick and hard materials too. Um,
Right. It
but
still has a concrete coldness to it.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So Modernism Week coming up in February is a
Mhm.
great immersion, not only to be exposed and learn more about the mid-century modern architects of Palm Springs, but there's some architects that are very, on the, they're very hip architects like Barbara Bester that are going to be speaking. So that's
Ronnie Sassoon, I'm going to go to that. She's speaking about her three houses. One of them is a Marcel Breuer in Connecticut. Another is a Neutra in Los Angeles, and then another is her New York loft. And she has an extensive art collection. So she's going to be talking about that, which should be interesting. But those are the kinds of things that will be going on there. There are all kinds of lectures on all the mid-century architects. Those are just a couple that
And
I've
actually going on the tours, being in the space, in the
right.
homes. And so, yeah, that sounds like a fantastic, that last lecture you were just talking
Right.
about. I definitely want to get there. And so we just tell our viewers to go to modernismweek.com,
Right.
and it's coming up in February. And I
And
think
the
those,
tickets went on sale today, and they
okay.
sold out very fast. So there's
And
one
hotels now go fast too, especially
right.
in Palm Springs. So
Right.
really start
So
planning.
right. Charles Phoenix does a bus tour, and it's like a double-decker bus, and he's a hoot. Okay, he has like a take on everything, and he gives a tour on this double-decker bus of all the houses and stops and tells you about them, and that's great if you can get into that.
Okay.
Then there's another tour I think I want to go on of Little Tuscany. I really haven't explored that area.
Ooh, me
There's
neither.
areas. My sister's house is in Twin Palms. That's like the Kreisel houses, and she's so so I've seen them on the walking tours of those houses. There are all kinds of parties in the evening at different houses. So it's like really fun and very educational.
Yeah. And kind of going back in time, but again, being, on the cusp of the future. And
Right.
I think that's a really great sneak preview. And to give us some of your favorites, which I didn't know about, I think that's going to be really, really helpful for our viewers to start planning. And we are so grateful to have you as an expert, somebody to give us the inside view and also to really know this market here in Los Angeles. And we'll certainly be sharing your information in terms of how to get a hold of you. If I don't know if you're open to share that.
Sure.
Um, how would folks contact you if they would like
Okay.
to look at some real
So,
estate?
okay. So I sell real estate in both LA. I have something really fantastic coming up, and but I can't talk about it.
Ooh, that
And
gives more of a cliffhanger to our.
a mid-century, and then it's Linda Lynda dot Kahn at compass.com. Okay, so you can look
Great.
me up there.
Great. Well, thank you. We're really privileged to get this information, and we certainly want to know what this house is. So, for all those that are interested, do inquire. And I look forward to speaking with you and experiencing Modernism Week in the
Um,
new year, Linda.
Great.
Yeah, I'm excited. Sounds fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and we look
Welcome.
forward to
Thank
it.
you, Rachel. Okay. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.
This is Psychotecture by Rachel Malvald, with coaching, consultation, and psychotherapy offered virtually and in-home throughout the Los Angeles greater area and nationally. We work to ease design challenges to create transformative habitats. Thank you, and we look forward to the next episode and your questions. If you're enjoying this Psychotect Is In, please subscribe to my podcast, as well as follow me on social media at Rachel Malvald. And if you are a client, couple, or designer architect having a design challenge, please feel free to email me at my website, psychotecture.com, or Rachel at psychotecture.com.